Welcome to the Trump Report, and it's, I guess, with the asterisk of, for lack of a better name, let's address the elephant in the room, and that's not the partisan elephant, nor am I guilty of the body shaming of President Trump that a lot of people are trying to discourage, which I still encourage, though, because I think it's the only thing that actually bothers him. You know, when you try to chastise a man for attempting to steal democracy, he doesn't care. But if you point out how fat he is, it's like he knows. Anyway, we don't quite know what we want to call the show, but right now in the chat, Andreas Frobe, the White House report. That's better than the Biden report. It just doesn't sound right. I'm Christian Bladt, joined as always by Scott Moore.
Hey, and as I said, we've got a little bit of time. We've got a little bit of time until we have to
and Tamra Brown.
Hi there. We should just have a poll or something so listeners can or should we just leave it entirely up to Storage Yard Resident? Let's just let him decide.
I asked him,
I was going to say that.
Storage Yard Resident pointed out that our last episode was touted as the series finale, and as I tried to explain to him, we were always going to do more of the show. I just figured we were going to call it something else, and I still feel that. When we were doing the show from the studios of AfterBuzz, and when the previous election ended, I had the thought of like, well, what if we call it like the political buzz or something like that? But then our godfather, Don Undergaro, suggested the Trump Report, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds catchy. So that's how that came about. So I should just text him, hey, what should I call it? Because he also came up with Trump versus Hillary. So, really, this would be the first time naming this show without his input. Anyway, it's been a little while since we did the show. Does
he have his phone off?
No, I could
check an email.
I could text him. I just don't know that I want to bother him with this, but maybe it was just his birthday. It'd be happy birthday. As a gift, give me a title for the Trump Report, a new title for the Trump Report. So it's been a very interesting few days. I actually forget what the last date was that we did it, but it was after all the networks had, it was even, everybody had called the projected Biden to win the election. I think the last time we did the show.
I don't think Georgia was called yet. I think Pennsylvania was called.
Right. Yeah.
And
but yes, we were post 270 electoral votes. And now we're looking at 306, which I remember being told that 306 electoral votes was a landslide. I remember being told that not that long ago. So it must be true. And I think that, we talked a lot about Four Seasons total landscaping the last time, because it still continues to be, in a year filled with darkness and despair and just depressing things. Really, Four Seasons total landscaping was one of the truly bright spots. Yes, a vaccine that will save millions of lives, but right next to that is Four Seasons total landscaping. But the entity that is Sidney Powell has also been crazily entertaining. So I feel like I want to start there. And the big trend on social media right now, Tamra, of course, is a TikTok superstar, but on the old social media, it's a lot of what is it? How it started, how it's going, and we talked about this, I think, in our last show. And so what you were getting was the tweet from President Trump talking about his Cracker Jack legal team, mentioning Sidney Powell, and somebody was nice enough to highlight her name. And then the how it's going was the press release that like, oh yeah, no, she's not working for President Trump in an official capacity, but she's just practicing law on her own. We don't even know her, which comes after like the 60-minute, not 60 Minutes, the TV show, the hour-long press conference where she promised bombshells, which is a press conference that managed to rankle Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, Rush Limbaugh, and, plenty of other people. But all the people that like, look, we're trying to do our job here, but you're not giving us anything. Like even we can't eat this much shit, you know? So Tamra,
you're not even giving us enough Play-Doh that we can mold this into our usual concoctions.
Right. You have to give us solid shit, not liquid diarrhea. What am I supposed to do with this? It won't fit into the Play-Doh barbershop mold. In any case, which is a really awful visual that I've given people, especially on the West Coast where it's still early in the morning. So happy breakfast for those of you enjoying it. Tamra, what are your thoughts on the Sidney Powell caper, as it were?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to go to me first because I don't know that much about it aside from
That's
memes
okay.
here and
That's
there.
all right. You know what? The meme, we learn so much from memes these days.
Isn't it? It's a beautiful world, isn't it?
It's a beautiful world because everything is I mean, what did I just do? I just did the how it started, how it's going. That's really what you need to know. And really, this was somebody that was, she promised these blockbusters and just wait for it. And, you have your sort of, you're a little bit more measured, but people that still were holding out hope that President Trump could win in the courts. But even they started to be like, you got to give us something. And, they immediately turned on Tucker Carlson because he's like, would you like to come on and show some of that evidence? And her response was, no, stop bothering me. So, that was probably an indication. But I think that what really did it in, and Scott, you can jump in and let me know if you think that this is what it was. It was when she actually went after Georgia and said that the Democrats actually had won in Georgia. And also this idea that's out there that people in the Georgia runoff on January 5th should vote for President Trump as a protest. And I think Democrats and your never Trumpers even are like, yes, that's an excellent idea. You should write in Donald Trump for both of those runoffs. Please do that. What do you think of all of it? And, just sort of the way it's unfolded, it's if we had done the show on Friday, it would have been one narrative. If we'd done it on Monday, it's another. And, here we are now, it's Tuesday.
I mean, it just goes to show if she's too crazy for Rudy Giuliani, then, she's crazy. Yeah. It's the typical MO with Trump. It's kind of like the whole time when all the other people were indicted for crimes when the Russian investigation was going on. He's like, oh, I barely knew that person. Oh, I don't know them. They don't work for me. That's all of a sudden like, now she doesn't work for me. She doesn't speak for me. I think also what put it over the line too was when she said that basically Republican Governor Brian Kemp was bought off by Dominion Voting Company to be able to to change the vote. I mean, hello, Brian Kemp is about as pro-Trump as it comes. To even suggest something like that is laughable. And I think that's where she lost any kind of whatever she had left as far as integrity or anything at that point. Because when you start accusing very loyal Trumpian Republicans of being bought off to somehow be able to give that to the Democrats in their state is just totally insane. So, yeah, I think that was sort of the last straw there when they realized that was happening. They're like, forget it. She's too crazy even for us.
Well, and Tamra, obviously the most believable part of this, and something Andreas Froby's bringing up in the chat literally at this moment, was that the big Democratic machine conspired with Cuba and also voting software that was developed by Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, who of course is not the leader there anymore, and I do believe has passed.
He has passed like 7 years ago.
Yeah,
so I was like, that's talent.
And look, from a branding standpoint, that's like I got a point at Hugo Chavez. Like nobody knows anybody else in that part of the world. I'm surprised she didn't mention Fidel Castro, not Raul, but Fidel Castro, because that's that's got the brand recognition. So.
And also someone who's been dead for several years too.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, Tamra, as a comedian, do you feel like maybe they should have gotten a few minutes of stage time at a local club and worked on some of this stuff before they actually brought it out in front of people, before they started throwing some of these allegations around?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Did she mention 5G? You know, it's like they have this list of greatest hits, right? They have their greatest hits, and it sort of just doesn't matter. They just have to hit these buzzwords. It's just that's really, there doesn't have to be any cohesion to what they're saying, or obviously not logic, but just hit the buzzwords of voter fraud. Um, well, you know, still being so tied up in this fraudulent election is what they're claiming. So you can't even go back to the old hits of the 5G and Hillary's emails and things like that. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, you just got to hit the buzzwords, and that will put you on a ballot in the Republican Party. Just hit the buzzwords.
Yeah, no, and I mean it's there. I mean you are seeing a lot of the current narrative is like, all right, well, get ready for a third Obama term, and there are probably people who are like, oh yeah, that's probably what we could use right now, and Scott. President Trump is always quick to point to the success of the market after his election, and how he had to start getting credit from the day he was elected in 2016. Since he has been, I guess, unelected, the market has been doing quite well. We've had some news of vaccines, but also I guess the Dow topped 30,000. I understand that he did like a drive by in the briefing room today. I actually did not see it, but I was reading about it. Mm-hmm. So he hasn't taken any questions from reporters in I think it's more than 10 days now. But he did make this a point. He made a point to point out, like, yeah, look how great it is, but it's the reason it's great is probably not why he should even try and get the momentary accolades, right?
No, absolutely. And in fact, I was reading something about that. And it was basically a little bit of both. Like you said, as we know, the stock market is always forward looking. So now that they're seeing the sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, that there's going to be some vaccines that are going to come out in the spring, but also after the GSA announcement yesterday added some stability, knowing that, yes, there is going to be this transfer of power. President-elect Biden did win. And now that it's happening in the federal government and that momentum is moving forward, that gave a little sigh of relief to the stock market, as well as a lot of them are very happy that Janet Yellen was announced to be the Treasury Secretary as well. They, in that world, really do like her and respect her a lot. So you had a couple things that are happening
who's
that they? Again have nothing to do with them. The people on Wall Street, like, they like the fact that Janet Yellen is going to be Treasury Secretary. Most people do respect her and everything, and know that when she was there on the Fed chair in 2014 and 2018 is when we had some really good economic movement in general at the last tail end of the Obama administration. So yeah, it has absolutely nothing to do with him. And as we've said this time and time again, yeah, you can get credit for things on your watch and everything, but really the daily minutia of the stock market is, in particular, really has nothing to do with a president, good or bad, Democrat or Republican. So, he can do whatever he wants, and it still doesn't change the fact that he's still done and he's still leaving. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that obviously the seminal moment we've had since Election Day, I mean, apart from, the news outlets calling things, is the authorization of the Government Services Administration to actually proceed with the transition. And Tamra, I wanted to get your thoughts about, there's this woman, Emily Murphy, who probably never expected to have her at mentions go the direction that they did. She issued this statement yesterday where she said that, no one encouraged her to act one way or the other, and she was just trying to follow the letter of the law. And unfortunately, contradicting that is the President of the United States, who said that he just gave authorization for the Government Services Administration to go forward right on the same timeline as this. So it's, and I think on a human level, you can understand someone who is pressured from their current boss in terms of who the president is, and whether it's right or you don't believe it's right. I can understand, that it's it has to be a difficult decision. It's easy for other people to say, just do the right thing. And I guess in her statement, her letter to President-elect Biden, she mentioned threats to her and her family and her pets. So I think that, and there's a lot of people in my timeline who were tweeting at this woman, telling her that she needed to do her job. What do you think about someone who finds himself in that situation? Someone who's, a career federal employee, yes, appointed by the sitting president, but having to make a decision on what to do.
Well, first of all, I'm always confounded. I'm like, so I try to put myself in the headspace of the people who actually send death threats to a public figure. When somebody as angry as certain people can make me, I would never in a million years threaten them. That's just such unhinged behavior, and the fact that a lot of people do that is just really unnerving. I think if we've learned anything in the past, I won't even say 4 years, but in the past, in sort of the rise of the extremist era, starting with the Tea Party, I don't know, but like just the awareness at how large of a percentage of our fellow Americans are not mentally stable. So anyway, firstly that. Secondly, I would think that getting into any government position, I would think that you'd be aware ahead of time that you are going to be faced with, I don't know. I mean, getting into a job like that, are you aware ahead of time that you may have to weigh your job versus a moral compass? I would think that that's something that they would consider, but yeah, it's I don't know. It's good that I guess our country has built in the checks and balances so that when we think a coup is going to happen, it just doesn't. I don't know. We have enough protections, I guess, built in that we can't. It's not actually going to happen.
Yeah, no. I definitely understand that. I agree. And my aunt, for a time, by the way, actually worked for the Government Services Administration. And when you work in Washington for an agency like that, you go back and forth with different parties in terms of presidential power, Senate, House, and it's just you just do your job, And I think there was an infuriating aspect, Scott, to, people just looking like, so this one woman is holding up the entire transition. But for whether it's her bosses, whether it's directly from the president, you're being told like, well, you can't do this, and it's like, it seems like it's her decision, but I don't think it really was her decision, because I think if it just to stop the death threats of her pets, she probably would be like, yeah, fine. Just give Joe Biden the keys to everything. It's fine. Let him have Mar-a-Lago too. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I mean, look, kind of going back to Tamra's point, yes, mental health is something that's never been really taken seriously in this country. We talk about physical health. We talk about losing weight. We talk about all the other things that you're supposed to do, but mental health is just always put on the side burner. However, I also say that it's so much easier now to sit in anonymity, especially at home, and type out something on your keyboard, on your phone, and it seems very innocent. You just, whatever you're thinking in your head, now you're putting out there and not really realizing the repercussions. Because we know 9 times out of 10, if somebody was looking at Emily to her face, would they say these things? No. It's because they just feel safe and just in the comfort of wherever they are, typing whatever they want that's in their head, but they wouldn't actually say it or do it on that end. But I will say, yes, she was definitely hamstrung. Yes, she's one person that technically had the authority to move this over. But I'll admit, I also tweeted her and said, do your job, because when we look back to 2016, we saw right after Donald Trump won the Electoral College, who, again, when you look at the numbers, didn't win the popular vote, won by the narrowest of margins, and they didn't waste any time making sure that transition happened. And for whoever in that administration beyond Trump and everyone else that made her hold back on that, is again taking precious time away from that transition. So no, she never should have gotten death threats, but there should have been a better way of being able to move that forward instead of waiting, almost, what is it now, 3 weeks? It was almost 3 weeks after the election to even be able to move this forward. And this was not, and she brought up the year 2000 at one point, but there was nothing even remotely as close as 2000. We were not waiting on one state, which was less than 1,000 votes different on 6 million cows. We had multiple states that had already gone for him by thousands and thousands of votes. I mean, these states were not as close. And so for them to hold back was really affecting the ability to move things forward. So, that was an issue. And her letter to Biden still had these little sort of digs there about the death threats and everything, but, made it seem like it wasn't that, that it was super close and that she wasn't quite sure what to do. It was like, no, you knew, and you held on it and you sat on it. And, I get it. She never expected to be in a position like this because it's usually a nameless position. Like you said, you're just in the background every other day of the year, except one day every 4 years, or 8 years if a president gets reelected, to have to trigger this transition. So, I mean, it is not something that's their normal everyday thing. And I do feel for her in that sense. However, she did bring it upon herself a bit by not being able to be more forthcoming and be able to make this have happened at least a week to 10 days ago. So,
yeah, and I think having a conversation about this not long ago, I mentioned that the GSA actually did give some funding to the George W. Bush administration before while the lawsuits were still going on. They're like, it looks pretty likely, and it was just an issue of money, which, despite what they say, Washington has no problem spending money.
Right.
So if you had given all this, this access to President-elect Biden.
But it is beyond the money, too. It is beyond the money. It's the fact of, like you said, it's allowing those people in the government to be able to have interactions with the incoming Biden team. It is being able to give those security briefings. It's more than just the money. It's being able to make that official so that there is not overlap. And that was the big thing that people were saying from the 2001 attacks, the terrorist attacks, is like, look, if you have too much of blind spots there and you don't have enough time to get everything set up, it can lead to dangerous situations. So, yes, I mean, it's more than the money, and that's the problem. It's like the money you could deal with. I mean, Biden is loaded with money that they could be able to use and pay what they need to from their campaign to have office space and other things. It's the important government functions that had been left behind.
That's fair. It was not a great moment, by the way, when the transition team sent out fundraising emails asking people to donate, because it was just like, wait, you had enough money. Like, what are you doing? President Trump continues to raise money, allegedly for his legal cases, which do continue. They continue to not go well. I guess it was Friday was the one in Pennsylvania, or I think it was actually on Saturday. The judge, who I guess was a member of the Federalist Society and clearly no lefty appointee, who just had a very well worded, dismissing a case with prejudice is something that happens on TV, but I guess not in actual courtrooms. And Giuliani and company, not Sidney Powell, because she was never a part of the team, but everybody else is wasting everyone's time by bringing these things. And they're bringing these cases to courts with the idea of continuing to appeal them, but regardless of what the composition of the Supreme Court is, Tamra, I feel like they don't want any part of this. I mean, we talked about John Roberts being tired of having Obamacare brought to him, and what he really doesn't want to have to do is try and fix, air quotes, fix an election. I think that if it ultimately reaches him, he's just like, him, as in all of them. They're just like, as many memes as there are, and it goes back to memes of how Clarence Thomas would like to get back at Joe Biden for the way he handled his questioning of him in his confirmation hearings 30 plus years ago. I don't think that the Supreme Court is interested in rigging an election, especially not for Donald Trump. But what do you think, Tamra?
Well, just because you mentioned the Clarence Thomas case, and I heard an entire report about how Anita Hill, somehow, I don't think she made like a public statement, but somehow it came out that she voted for Biden, but she was like super like she was just like, I hate this man, you know, and I think it, you know, that's everybody keeps pointing out what a sort of moderate, like tries to work with both sides Biden is, and the fact that Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill both dislike him. It feels like he done them wrong. Sort of, I don't know, speaks to his bipartisanship, I guess.
Well, it's an instance of, I really don't like this guy, but then there's the other guy, and I mean, that's just crazy. Like, you know, so I have to vote for the guy I don't like instead of the guy who's insane, which we will get to the mental aspect that came up earlier. But I wanted to let you finish your thought.
Or I said bipartisanship, not that Clarence versus Anita Hill is two sides of a political spectrum. But anyway, yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court, I think that I feel like Amy Coney Barrett is like sitting there like this, like she knows that she was appointed to do like very specific things, and those specific things are just not crossing her desk, and so I bet she's just a little bored right now. She's feeling a little frustrated. That's what I keep thinking every time. Yeah, Roberts doesn't want to tackle one of the things.
Well, yeah, and I think when it comes to her, it's also like, look, President Trump can say that he needed me on the bench because the election might go to the courts, but she probably also is like, yeah, but I don't want any part of that. You know, it's it's like, you know, I just, yeah, look, I'm just here to overturn Roe v. Wade. All right. I'm a single issue justice. You know, I'm not here to rig an election. Okay. I'm only here for one thing and one thing only.
She's the woman for Trump in the background that's been hired, placed there
right.
just to specifically show.
Yeah, the woman at the NBC town hall who just kept nodding her head like every time that Trump said anything. Yeah, which you know, another moment in the story. What do you think, Scott, when it comes to the Supreme Court? You know, in terms of, like, you know, saying like, no, our goal is to bring this to the Supreme Court so they can overturn the election. I mean, those aren't the exact words, but the words being used are to replace the electors, you know, and we've heard a number of people talk about that, but that seems to be the stated goal of the legal team of Giuliani and not Powell.
Right. I mean, look, that was they telegraphed this at the end of the election, even when Donald Trump was nominating her. He said specifically, I want 9 people on the court to be able to deal with any of these election fraud issues that are going to come up. So that was part of their game plan all along. But of course, you have to have a valid reason. You can't just, you can send anything and you can sue anybody for anything, but you really, at the end of the day, have to have a legitimate, valid reason, and something that's valid to be able to have the Supreme Court be able to even try to attempt to move it over. But right now, there is just nothing even remotely close enough to allow that to even happen. And you know, Chief Justice Roberts knows that he's been very careful about not letting the court become too politicized, because he knows that also reflects on him as well. And they saw what happened in year 2000, rightfully or wrongfully, when the Supreme Court stepped in and you had that 5-4 decision overruling the Florida State Supreme Court. So it is not something that even he would take lightly, regardless if he had a 9-0 conservative Supreme Court. And the thing that also people fail to think about as well is that even with a majority conservative Supreme Court right now, does not still mean that things would go in Trump's favor anyways, even if they were to get it there. But it's just like stepping on that third rail. You just don't want to do it if you can avoid it. And they've got to have at least some kind of valid, real, you know, fraud case that they can bring, but you're just not going to see that across multiple states. And again, with the margin of the vote totals, it just wouldn't be able to change an outcome, or there's not enough uncertainty there to say, okay, now we're going to have a different slate of electors coming in. And we've seen that now with even those Republican state legislatures that don't want to get involved with that either. I mean, so there, yes, we could see how fragile in a lot of ways our democracy is by seeing how Trump has tried to push it to such an extreme. But as Tamara said earlier, it is good to see the checks and balances there, that even a lot of Republicans just don't want to even get into that minutia of doing something that undemocratic, even in states like Georgia and Pennsylvania with Republican legislature and Michigan. But again, he won Michigan by 154,000 votes, Biden did. So, I mean, it's just not even feasibly close enough to be able to try to overturn it and select different electors, and it just would be very messy. And I think their goal was, their hope was they would be able to send split electors like we've talked about in the past. Like the Democratic governor would say of Michigan or Pennsylvania, oh, here's our electors that are going to go. The Republican legislature in Michigan and Pennsylvania would say, here's our electors for Trump that are going to go. And then you get it to the House and it becomes confusing. And now the House has to decide which electors they're going to take. So, you know, that's what they were hoping for, is to add that chaos and uncertainty to be able to make it so that, you know, different slates of electors would show up from these states and they wouldn't be able to give the 270 to Joe Biden, and it would be thrown to the House or Senate, I think was their end goal before it even got to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and I mean, this was the same groundwork they were laying in 2016, but then he actually won. So then they were very quick to pump the brakes on the voter fraud allegation. And I mean, it does continue. You know, Andreas Froby does point out that, you know, how much will this damage American democracy with 70% of Republicans believing this? I think there are a percentage of Democrats who also, you've heard enough about it where you're like, yeah, there probably was something, but I like the end result, so I don't want to, you know, look too closely. But you have, you know, nonpartisan, bipartisan statements about, you know, the security of the election. And I think that the fact that people don't trust it. I mean, I forget who the quote was from, but it's like, you don't have to worry about Russia meddling with the election because you have this sitting president casting doubt on the results of it, you know? And I mean, just what this does to, you know, a lot of people aren't concerned about the way the rest of the world sees us, but traditionally, you know, the United States has sent people to help supervise elections in, you know, developing nations, developing democracies. But now it's like, no, we're not interested. Go ahead.
It makes me wonder, like, do most Americans think the election process, like, do they think that there's never any person who is deceased receiving a ballot? Do they think that normally just never happens? Like, I feel like, if anything, this is bringing to the American public's attention that there are errors, and as minuscule as they may be in the grand scheme of things, but this happens, and it just seems like so many people are just somehow like unaware that there are, like, you know, very slight inefficiencies.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not the margins, you know, I guess the 5-6 figure margins for Biden in these states that are the contested ones, you know, even Nevada and Georgia, which, you know, are some of the smaller margins than, say, Michigan.
Officials just keep saying, like, this is the most accurate when it comes to, like, errors and things like that. Like, this is the most accurate election we've ever had. It's usually far more than this.
Yeah, and I think that you know, all you have to say is like, well, we can't trust those mail-in ballots. You say it enough times, you're like, well, yeah, clearly we can't trust those. You know, so I do. Yeah, I think that's where it comes into play. And you know, there was a little bit of this waiting game, Scott, going into yesterday because because Michigan was certifying the statewide vote. They'd already done it at the county level, and there was this 4-member panel. 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And you already knew that one of them was not going to vote to certify. But I did not watch the Zoom meeting in real time, but people that I follow on Twitter were watching it. And it was fairly clear that the one Republican who hadn't said that was like, it's not our job to do this. You know, you actually have to certify the vote before you can do anything with it. And then the guy who had said he wasn't going to vote to certify, he just abstained. So it was, you know, a 3-0-1 abstention. And I think that, and then the latest lawsuit in Pennsylvania, I mean, the timeline was very small between that happening and, all right, fine, Emily, go go give Biden some keys and some money. You know, what did you think of, as that was unfolding? And let's not forget the visit to the White House by low level Michigan, essentially Michigan state election officials.
Well, I have to just go back to saying, if it is damaging with Trump, not acknowledging the results and saying, things were fraudulent, because yes, it does have an effect on your voters and your supporters, and it does make people trust the institution less. And if that was really the case, then wouldn't you imagine that there would be fraud going for Trump as well? That's why I just find it so ridiculous and laughable that everywhere else it's totally fine. Like, well, there's no fraud in Florida because it went for Trump. I mean, that's what's dangerous, is that because he's such a sore loser, he cannot admit that he lost and do it gracefully. He wants to bring everything else down with him. And so, yes, it is dangerous to continue to harp on there being fraud. And if you really were concerned about fraud, let's talk about voter suppression and the fact that 700,000 voters were denied after the amendment passed in Florida to be able to have felons have their right to vote back. Let's talk about how difficult it was to vote in Harris County when you have one drop-off box for 4 million voters in a county that's bigger than the state of Rhode Island. So if you want to talk about fraud, let's talk about that, when you're making it more difficult for your own voters to be able to have an opportunity to vote, instead of coming up with ridiculous, horrible things about fraud against him, which are just virtually non-existent. And yes, there always are going to be issues, like people will die, and especially when we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it may have happened after the fact that, before a county would even know. So of course they're going to be sent to ballot, and like we've talked about in the past, like you can move out of state and you can tell them, it may take 1 or 2 times to say I moved out of state, and you may still get a ballot there in your old address, but it's few and far between. And again, the amount of effort that someone would have to go to be able to do that type of fraud is not that easy. So it's just non-existent. And I think that, watching Trump try to bring those Republican lawmakers from Michigan in, to me, is another impeachable offense right there. It's like you're trying to manipulate the vote. You lost. And thankfully, again, those Republican lawmakers made a statement afterwards saying, hey, we came in, we had told him we have not seen any fraud. And again, this has to be hard for them too. Like I went back earlier and said, for those Georgia officials, like Brad Raffensperger, who's the Secretary of State, a big Trump supporter, and Governor Brian Kemp, big Trump supporter, to be able to have to acknowledge the fact that their state lost and went to Biden is already hard enough. And then to have to do it in a more vocal way than you normally ever would, because generally you just let those things slide. You're like, okay, it's just a non-deal. It gets certified and you move on, and no one has to even really deal with it. But the fact that now Trump has made it such an issue that these Republican lawmakers are having to go out and really step on it, it's got to be difficult. Those Republican lawmakers in Michigan clearly were not necessarily wanting Biden to win their state, but they're doing what they need to do. And so that's the good thing, is that it has not passed in any sense or form his manipulations or his cry for fraud, but it is going to affect his voters. And he's not going anywhere, like we've said again, too. And he's going to be there tweeting in the background and keeping his voters riled up and keeping his base intact, because that's all he has left. So it is dangerous, and it needs to, and Republicans that are still in power need to be more vocal about the fact that that's dangerous and to shut it down.
Right. And that notion ties into the suggestion from Storage Yard Resident, our friend, that we should call the show Countdown to Trump's Second Term. My feeling continues to be that President Trump will be in no condition to be running for anything in 2024.
Yes, Trump is no Grover Cleveland.
He's not.
I think he means Don Jr., doesn't he?
He's not Grover Cleveland.
Yeah, Don Jr. would make a little bit more sense, but
I think I assume Don Jr. is already grooming his campaign staff, already picking.
Yeah, well, and he's going to run in the primaries against Ivanka, so that's obviously going to be part of the problem.
That's going to be a tough decision for Repubs. Should I vote for Ivanka or Don?
We've brought it up before, Tamra, but can you believe that Democrats went out of their way to rig the election, and they forgot to fix even a single House race, and they've lost almost all of them? The Senate, they didn't. They forgot how much they dislike Mitch McConnell. and they forgot to get rid of him. They forgot to get rid of Lindsey Graham. So they forgot. They didn't even look down ballot in any of these states. And they only worried about president, which I don't know, is, I guess, not the craziest thing, but I don't know. I mean, do you we've talked about how, you have friends and people that you talk to of different political leanings. I know that they typically don't talk to you about politics, but do you have people in your life that are convinced that not just that there was voter fraud, but are they convinced that this election was stolen?
I've mentioned a couple times, I actually don't have very many Republicans in my life. So that was like a rare vacation when I was in a house full of Republicans at that one point. Those aren't people that I normally have any sort of.
So wait, that's not the reality show that you're pitching for OAN?
It is now. But there was one person. There was one person on Facebook who was. I guess the couple times that I've seen it, it's more of this sort of questioning, like, what would the penalty be? What is the penalty for voter fraud? And then, they cite their sources, and they're coming from these extremely Christian publications that I guess are, supporting the claim of fraud. And I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, just are you seeing people that are convinced that the election is stolen?
I'm not seeing that much. And I think we all really, really appreciate when any sort of Republican speaks out against fraud, saying that this is not. But aside from Mitt Romney, I mean, anybody who's currently holding public office really isn't doing that, which
it's not a lot. It's the ones you'd expect, like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, and you've gotten a couple of governors. You've had more in the last few days, but then you even have like Lamar Alexander, who gives sort of the backhanded, like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that this thing's over.
Yeah, nobody wants to fully admit. They sort of do it in these padded. These sort of padded statements where it's just like, well, we just want to make sure that due process is served. Like if we just want to follow these allegations through and follow the lawsuits through, because if you believe in the election, you need to, which is true. If fraud should take place, absolutely, we need to hear those, go through the process of filing any. But the fact that the lawsuits aren't even getting to fruition, that there's just such a lack of evidence that we're not getting anywhere. And I feel like that just needs to be more largely acknowledged by any Republican that's currently holding office.
Right. And I guess for the most part, Scott, they don't feel like it actually helps them. And one, you don't want to anger President Trump, not at this point, not while he's got a little bit less than 2 months left. I forget. I think it's 56 days, but I might be wrong. But somebody's doing it. Somebody's posting every day on Twitter. I forget who I saw, and I can't remember if I have the right number in my head. But
yeah, 56. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that I don't know. I'm never surprised by anything that happens, especially not in the year 2020. Are there individuals who you would have thought, like, Mitt Romney? Yeah, of course, he's somebody that I think would have been first, much like, as we talked about last time, George W. Bush could not have sent out a congratulatory message to President-elect Biden any faster because of the way that the Trump family has treated his family. Mm-hmm. But is there anyone that comes to mind that you thought, like, oh, this is somebody? And no, nobody was expecting Lindsey Graham to do the right thing ever. Is there someone that you just like thought, oh, this is really somebody that I thought would have said something?
No, I think there's been no surprises. But like I said, I just go back to Georgia and the fact that these very Trump elected Republican officials like Brian Kemp have certified the results for Biden, and more or less have beat back on Trump saying do the right thing, his tweets and everything. The thing is, it's not so much that people are at this point. Yes, they were at some point, but now it's like they're not so much scared of him per se. They're scared of his base and his voters.
Sure.
And as some people have been talking about, is you have a lot of Republican voters now that are not feeling very good about voting for those Senate races in Georgia, because now they're feeling like, wow, this was stolen from us in Georgia. You know, he won in Georgia, so what's going to say that that they're going to try to steal it for the Democrats again in the Senate races? So I'm not going to go bother and vote. So I'm like, hey, Trump, just keep it up and help the Democrats take those 2 seats.
Yeah.
Because I can backfire where people now also, not just that fact of, yes, it was fraudulent, but now you're going to have voters that are going to say, you know what, if it's fraudulent, I'm not going to go out and bother to vote because my vote's not going to count anyways. So if you get enough Republicans to do that in just enough areas, especially in a place now that is such a battleground state like Georgia, it doesn't take a lot of those voters to be able to knock off these incumbents. So, you know, in a way, Trump doing this continuously can backfire against the Republicans going into this race now if people are not feeling confident that their vote is really going to be counted. So, and you've been reading articles about this and hearing this about Republican voters there saying, you know, that it was stolen from him and that could happen with the Senate too. So, you know, the fact that he does this kind of stuff a lot of times is counterintuitive to his own, you know, self, because now it backfires spectacularly in some of these things when you constantly are doing that.
Like telling his base not to early vote, not to mail in vote.
Right. Exactly. Case in point. Exactly.
Yeah. And then being shocked when, you know, your mail-in vote goes, you know, like, I don't know, 87-23, you know, and like, oh, wait, what? Well, that can't be accurate. And so at this moment, the projection for the Senate is 48-48, right? So
it's 50-48 right now.
It is 50-48. So it would then be 50-50 if Democrats won both of those.
Right.
But then they have, I guess, the tiebreaker of Kamala Harris. So that makes the big difference. Okay. So, yeah, it's 48-50 at the moment. So, and I think that that's why I asked, because I felt like I was wrong. You know, I alluded to it earlier when I was talking about, you know, when it comes to this idea of mental health. And it was a very surprising moment to see just how much President Trump today has been retweeting Randy Quaid. And anybody who has seen Randy Quaid at any point, I mean, I'm sharing my screen right there, and he's done a lot of these like scary post-apocalyptic sort of, you know, videos that you see right there. And it's a lot of like, good idea, Randy, I'm working on it. So, you know, Cousin Eddie from the Vacation movies is now an unofficial advisor of the, I was going to say the leader of the free world, but the leader of the world that is unfortunately still free, much to the chagrin of the guy who lives in the White House. And just, it was just like, oh, okay, so it's that kind of day. It's the kind of day where the president is tweeting at Randy Quaid, who's been hiding out in Canada for a number of years because of allegations of crimes. I think he just thought it was Dennis Quaid. I think he was confused as to which of the brothers he was tweeting at. He's like, oh, wait, no, not Randy. Randy's the Don Jr. of that family.
Real quick, just because you mentioned Canada, I very much enjoy the Republicans who like to post tweets and videos saying, that's it, I'm moving. If Biden's president, I'm moving to Canada. I'm moving to the country with national health care and abortions legal. I'm going to go there because I disagree.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's, you know, and look, you'll hear those kinds of declarations on both sides. And I think just in general, Canada's like, no, we don't want any of you. Like, just all of you stay down there. I don't care who you voted for. The last thing we want is more Americans living here, you know? So yeah, it was just, I don't know. This is why I don't say that I tend to say, oh, I can't be surprised again. And then the president goes and tweets at Randy Quaid. And I'm like, no, see, I can still be surprised. Every day there's still something, you know? And it was, I came across that because I was just like, I remember when he tweeted that, you know, he authorized Emily Murphy and the Government Services Administration. He had to mention, he's like, but I'm still going to win. You know, and it's just like, if you really believe that, then why are you doing it? If you're convinced that you're going to win, and if you think you're going to win, I don't know, shouldn't you do something other than play golf? You know, I mean, it's he's literally, I mean, he didn't even do the event for the White House Christmas tree. He made Melania do it. Melania can't wait for January 20th. You know, I mean, I don't know if they'll ever get divorced, but she's going to live, he's going to go back to Mar-a-Lago and she'll be like anywhere else the next day. She's like, all right, this has been a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in a house with this guy. So I don't know. It isn't even the question of, is it surprising, Tamra? But did you think it would get quite this weird? You know, literally the Randy Quaid videos are the thing where I'm just like, okay, I couldn't have predicted that.
Yeah, I think Trump's retweeted people just as crazy as Randy Quaid before. There was no voice in any video, in any Randy Quaid, or there was nothing Trump has retweeted recently where somebody was yelling white power and then it had to be deleted.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
So I suppose it's a more mild tweet in that respect, a milder retweet in that respect. But no, I mean, if anything, I kind of feel like things are more normal than we expected. So many people just thought we were going to be in just second civil war at this point. And you know, how much worse a lot of people thought it could have been. So, I mean, things are still going to be crazy as long as Trump has the spotlight, but I do think it's tamer than what some of us were anticipating.
You know, I think if somebody is not on Twitter and they don't watch cable news, they probably have the assumption that Joe Biden's already president, you know, because they're like, oh yeah, I remember hearing something about that. But, you know, it's like, I'm just, you know, busy living my life. And, you know, the interesting thing is that there haven't been protests and marches. Yes, there was the 1,000 MAGA march that I know was supposed to be the Million MAGA march. But you know, even Sean Spicer said that Kayleigh McEnany had exaggerated the size of that. But I think that the only protest that I saw over the last weekend was actually, it was just earlier this week, is people in Newport Beach, California, who don't like that there's a curfew in California now at 10 o'clock. And, you know, that's a little bit of a local issue, but it does sort of speak to where we are 2 days before Thanksgiving. And you're having just recommendations of not traveling. You're having these sort of things imposed. Los Angeles County has closed down indoor dining effective tomorrow night.
Outdoor dining, yeah.
Sorry, outdoor dining. Yeah. I said but it's because indoor dining's been closed for a while. But the outdoor dining being closed down. And look, I'm going to be honest. I would really feel like we should be able to see, well, here's what happens with outdoor dining, and here's the specific spread associated with it, because just economically, it's been hard enough to run businesses. I personally have not done outdoor dining. I do a lot of takeout and stuff, but you know, I see people all the time just walking around, and you walk by and you see, and to me, when I see the restaurant, it's like, you know, they've taken the time to build like a new patio and they put in those heat lamps, and you're like, all right, good, they're going to be able to survive. And then it's not even the governor, it's the state, it's the city of Los Angeles is just like, yeah, no, you can't do that for at least 3 weeks. And I mean, I feel like it's much less safe to let people fly on airplanes to go to these places. You know, I mean, to me, just like sitting in a, you know, so, but I don't know. So I hear it, and it's like, I hope that they're doing this because they know that it's a problem, you know?
Well, I heard, and I don't know if I believe it either, that some of the people that have been getting the virus had gone to restaurants because people are not wearing their masks. And I have gone out several times to outdoor restaurants. But I also am on the side of, you know, even with the curfew, is the curfew really going to do anything from 10 to 2 except now make last call before 10 o'clock now, and people are racing to drink, and then you're just going back to someone's house, and then there's even less of an ability for people to, you know, see what's happening. And that's where I think a lot of the cases are going to come from, are people hanging out at private houses and apartments and everything in general. And if you restrict that ability to be able to go out and have it at least in an area that can be somewhat controlled, that's just going to send people, especially at 10 o'clock at night, which for a lot of people is still early if they're hanging out with people, to now be indoors because it's chilly, and now they're sitting inside and drinking until who knows when. So I agree with you. I don't know if it's the best use of our resources, but going back to Tamra's point about, I was concerned about a second civil war in the sense that people would uprise, especially Trump supporters. But then I kind of was thinking about recently, okay, we are not like we were in the past. We are all way too lazy. And if we can't even decide that we all are going to wear a mask and put a mask on our face, how is anyone going to even bother to get off the couch from watching Netflix or playing a video game or ordering the takeout to their door to actually go out and violently fight? I mean, it's just, we are all too lazy, and that comes from both sides. We're all
that's true, but Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't.
No, but in general, I'm saying enough people. You always will get those outliers, but enough people to actually go out and take up arms and everything. I mean, and most of us would just not. We're not in good enough shape to be able to walk to our front door.
Scott, you've given me the idea. It's sort of the same idea as carbon footprints for people who try to negate the amount of damage they've done on the environment.
Right.
What about a DoorDash-like service where you just hire people to go protest and possibly even break some windows or whatever on your behalf because you don't want to go outside? You're just
guys, can I make a TikTok? I want to use these ideas.
Please,
both of these are hilarious.
Use all of these ideas. That's what I like to. And joining us in the chat is Sam Whitfield, who has a show that he does as well called the Whitfield Report. Newsom doesn't follow his own rules and regulations, and I was talking specifically about Mayor of Los Angeles, but the thing about Gavin Newsom going to the French Laundry, which is a restaurant I've always wanted to go to, but still can't afford.
I have to take a loan to go there.
Yeah, going and sitting inside with all these people. It's like, it's not even the fact that someone did it, but it's the fact that it's him who tells everybody what they shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. And then he's just like, oh yeah, my bad. And it's like, you need to be better than that. You need to not be, and it's like, he was inside. It wasn't even like, they set up like a tent in the parking lot, which of course at the French Laundry, I can't even imagine. But, it's just such a bad look, and
that's par for the course for Newsom. Like he's he demands that we tackle climate change head on, and then he approves fracking. Like he's just, that's him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's, I think that people are going to remember him and any good that was done maybe in March in terms of, trying to, calm down the spread of the virus. I mean, when it comes time to, if there were to be a recall against him or just it's time for him to run for re-election, I think people are going to just remember Gavin Newsom. I don't like him, because when he's in the news, it's stuff like this where you're like, well, this guy's an asshole, and and so I don't know. I mean, and he used to be married to Kimberly Guilfoyle. So obviously he doesn't have the best decision making. And I agree with you 100%. It's just, it is hypocritical. And the Republican and Democrat members of California state legislature who are going to Hawaii or went to Hawaii for a big lobbyist paid thing, telling everyone else not to travel. And they're saying, oh, we're going to come back. I mean, both parties, I mean, it is incredibly hypocritical, and you're right. The only problem is that there are no good Republican alternatives. So Republicans have really got to see if they can find someone in a vein that's a moderate that'll appeal enough people, because otherwise Gavin Newsom can basically do whatever he wants and knows he's going to walk in to re-election in a state like California. So, but I mean, it's so we've already had Schwarzenegger as governor. Is Jean-Claude Van Damme a resident of California? Steven Seagal. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Bruce Willis.
Clooney, by the way, is more likely.
Okay, so yes, I would vote for George Clooney, but I was also about to say that I would definitely vote for Bruce Willis. If you put them both on the ballot, then I'm gonna have to steal a dead person's ballot and vote twice, because I wouldn't be able to choose between Clooney and Bruce Willis. But the severity of it is like you're trying to make a very serious point, and people can't take you seriously because you're not following your own advice. It's not like, oh yeah, you know what? I had 11 people at this thing instead of 10. You know, it's just the whole thing he shouldn't have been doing.
I mean, and you
And
would think he would know better too. That's the thing. If I was in his shoes,
yeah,
I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to be seen anywhere as much as I'd want to do that because I've got to lead by example. As much as I would love to go to French Laundry, I would be like, I cannot do this right now. We've got to get through this pandemic. And you have to know that even if you're going somewhere like that, you're a public official. It is going to get out somehow.
You'd think
So
that
why
there would
would you
have been
even
someone in
do
his
that?
circle to point that out.
Right.
too.
Like say,
somebody's
hey,
just like, this is a bad idea.
do it.
Yeah.
You
By
should
the
go
way,
to-
anyways.
it's up to, Newsom is the one that is going to replace Kamala Harris. Or, I mean, he's not replacing Kamala Harris, but it's up to him to.
To
Imagine if
point,
he's
yeah.
like, yeah, if he went the Dick Cheney route. Oh yeah, I found your replacement. It's
Yeah, me.
But yes, he is going to replace Kamala Harris,
Mhm.
and so the point there is also, look, in New York, Andrew Cuomo had been talking about yesterday he's going to get together with his mother and his
Mhm.
daughters, and then he's like for Thanksgiving, and now he's like, all right, fine, I'm not going to do that. I feel like, I guess that's because of the number of households it was, but at least he understood ahead of time. And yes, it's because people, if people knew that Gavin Newsom was on his way to the French Laundry, they probably would have spoken about it. So this was kind of giving people a heads up. But look, I was texting this morning with my friend, comedian Tom Kelly, very funny guy. I've known him for more than 20 years. And he got COVID. And as I was explaining to my wife, because she knows him, he got it the dumb way. He went to a party at a friend's house. They had a dinner party. He only went for dessert. And there were 9 people. He was there for an hour. And 7 of those 9 people tested positive for COVID. And he's actually had like symptoms. Fortunately, it's seemingly mild compared to another friend that I had who had it really bad for 3 weeks. So it's very easy to just think like, oh yeah, but I'm just going to do this thing,
Real quick.
And like the idea, look, this is in New York. So it's late November. So the idea of, oh yeah, we'll have a dinner party in the backyard is just not going to happen, So the advice of like, oh, why don't you have Thanksgiving outside? Even here in Los Angeles, it's going to be like 65 on Thanksgiving. So even for people who live in a lot of the country, like if you're in Michigan, you're like, oh my God, I would love a 65-degree outdoor.
Well, no, but it gets dark. But it gets dark early too. So you have to imagine that even if it's 65, the sun sets early. So.
But the reality is that you're not able to you're not able to do that, and then when you have people inside, it's I mean, and I think that you have people who are like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be with my immediate family who maybe I don't live with, but parents and a sibling, and I mean that's 3 households with 10, 12 people. It just takes one person going somewhere that, it's one person thinking that what they were doing was safe. And the reason why I mentioned, and my friend Tom, he posted like a short podcast today, just explaining like, yeah. So, I got it and this is what happened. And it's everything that they told you shouldn't do. I just figured it would be okay. And I think as you see how many people flew yesterday, it was the busiest air travel day in the past 9 months. And I've spoken with people who've flown, you wear masks, you feel, cleaner and somewhat safer, but you're still on you're still sitting there in recycled air in places that, in these seats that they clean now, but honestly, how clean are they?
Well, and I flew, like I said, back in September, October, and it was the same thing. There is no social distancing when people are getting on and off a plane. There just is not. So you're still going to be around somebody, even at the beginning and end of a flight, even if you were to sneak it at the end, or you're still going to be around people. And at the airport, it's still crowded. Even if you try to space out, you're still going to be around people. So you have to take that in consideration, and I did, and I knew that there was an inherent risk to that. And it is crazy because as I've said to you guys, I know my brother got it, but he was at home and got it from a roommate, hasn't been working all year. So it does show you that it can be very easy to get it.
A sneaky thing.
It is. So you have to be careful and use your best judgment. But would I go back during the holidays or something? That's a different story. I mean, that was, in the early fall, it was not a high travel period.
And also, I mean, when you look at,
you have to outweigh, what you're doing.
And
Yeah.
when you look at where things were just in California back in September, you felt like, I remember having a thought, like movie theaters were open in Orange County. And I always kind of start to think like, all right, when in LA County? And I believe they're closed again in Orange County.
And Ventura County. They opened briefly and they're closed again too. Yep.
Yeah. And I have a friend who, actually went to the movies a couple times, the indoor movies, and was just like, yeah, you feel like it's really clean. And, but of course, as soon as somebody, sticks their face in a bucket of popcorn, which is the way that I tend to enjoy a movie, the germs are going everywhere. So don't sit next to me. Look, I don't think it's my job to tell anybody what they shouldn't do. I just hope that people think about what they're doing, and just the fact that the consequences aren't necessarily for you. I mean, my friend Tom was much more worried about the fact that he saw his parents the next couple days after he went to this party, before he knew that anybody was sick at it. So the concern about, giving elderly relatives, any germs that you might have and don't realize.
Right. That's exactly it. It's not just about you. It's about the other people. And that's why I always say what I get a flu shot for, because it's like, if I get it, it may not be as bad, but I could sit in front of a line, pre-COVID, and pass on to the elderly person in front of me at line, and then she gets it and dies. So it is, again, it's bigger than just you. It is, like you said, it's being able to pass on to other people that you're not even aware that you have it. And now those people get very sick.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned getting a flu shot, because I wanted to end with sort of the vaccine news, which is the only good news that we seem to get. I mean, except for, I guess, if you have a rooting interest in the presidential election, I guess a lot of that can be good news. But, just in terms of universal good news, you just keep hearing about multiple vaccines, all at least 90% effective. You've heard about 2 that are almost 95% effective. And the problem, of course, is that you're going to have to get 2 shots. And what I was reading yesterday is that some of the side effects of the first shot are going to be pretty bad. So people might not come back for the second shot, and that's going to be the problem. And I guess somewhere down the road, Johnson & Johnson, they're not as far along as these other companies. They're going to have a single shot, but we won't have that for probably like another year. So like the down the road, like, oh, I got to get my flu shot and my COVID shot and a tetanus shot or whatever you have to get before you travel. That'll probably be the Johnson & Johnson one. Now, I say that if they want to give me all 3 shots at the same time, I would be happy to take them and let them fight it out and see what the odds are. But obviously each one of those shots would make me sick. So, but the idea that the way, from what it sounds, that I know people that don't trust the fact that it happened so quickly. I can understand that, but I would still like to, I don't know. I just want to be able to go to a concert again. I want to go to a baseball game. So I'm like, but Tamra, are you encouraged? Are you cautiously optimistic when you hear about the vaccine news? Are you skeptical? Do you think that Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro actually engineered these injections so that they can take over all of our minds after a pandemic? Good question.
Oh, I haven't heard that one. No, but
put that one on TikTok.
What I will say is that, Dolly Parton's $1 million contribution that potentially led to Moderna's vaccine. I said, I don't think any of us are surprised that if Dolly Parton has a hand in saving the world. That is
well, because she will always love us.
Exactly what I expected. So
that's the M. Night Shyamalan twist ending to 2020 that none of us saw, is that, oh, and by the way, Dolly Parton saved all of your lives.
Oh, that's a twist? No, I'm saying that's exactly what I thought was going to happen.
You're the only one who saw it. The rest of us, we didn't.
Yeah.
You know what? I think that we should all book trips to Dollywood next year, just as a way to say thank you. Let's give back to Dolly.
That's right.
So Scott, you hear about the, and Dr. Fauci has been making the rounds talking about it, and he's not the only one, but he, again, is sort of one of the most identifiable figures speaking out on these things. What do you think when it comes to the vaccine in terms of, confidence, yes, the markets, but also just in general, Americans confident in their way of life?
Yeah, I think that there's enough of them coming out now. And look, every single company has been putting their entire resources behind making this happen. But it goes to show that if there were other things like curing cancer and other that were given that same priority, it would be pretty incredible what could be accomplished. Although they are saying that some of the ability of using what they're doing with this vaccine for some of these may actually be able to help some of these other diseases as well, of how they're making it work. So it is really cool. But you'll see that a lot of places will probably not allow you, which is going to say, like, you can't go to a big sporting event or a concert or fly internationally on an airline or go somewhere without having proof of the vaccine. Like, you do go to a lot of countries, even now, it's like you have to show proof that you have the yellow fever vaccine if you want to go to a country. If you want to fly from Brazil to Central America or vice versa, you have to have proof that you've gotten these vaccines. And I saw today that Qantas is one of the first major airlines to say, you can't fly on us unless you will be able to prove that you've had the vaccine. So you will start to see, again, governments and certain entities and companies that will say, you don't have to get the vaccine. You just won't be able to come fly with us or come to our sporting event or concert without it. So yes, you do have a right, of course, not to get it, but you will see certain companies and governments and places that will start to say, without showing proof of this, you will not be able to come in. And that's what will happen. And what will happen is, once I think the first round of people get it, and hopefully there aren't any serious side effects, more and more people will feel comfortable to be able to get it as it becomes more widespread. But you're right, there some of these earlier vaccines do have pretty bad side effects where you have fatigue for multiple days on end. Yeah. And I think a lot of people will just have to stay home and be able to work through it. But we're all in that kind of world anyways. We're working remotely. So there'll be some flexibility. But I think you're right. It will scare some people away if their side effects are bad. Like, people don't get the flu shot because they're worried about the way the side effects are. So this is magnified. It will be hard for a lot of people to jump right on and do it. And it'll take some time for people to see that it is working.
Yeah, one of the more paranoid people that I follow on social media had shared an article about how Live Nation / Ticketmaster were basically sort of going to have a profile on people going to concerts, whether or not, it's sort of what you're talking about for airlines. Like, yeah, this person's had a shot, so you would be able to, attend events in large venues. And, she was very upset about it. And I remember thinking, I'm like, if it meant I could go to a concert, you'd be welcome to swab the inside of my nose between each band. That's fine. Like, if you're afraid that I caught it at the concession stand, go ahead and check again. That's fine. If it just means that I get to stay, and I think that I do understand people, look, people have not trusted these sort of things. And it's not even like anti-vaxxers. This is just people who are like, boy, this happened really fast. And you don't want anything bad to happen. So I think it's something we can be, hopeful about. But I think that this is, basically they're trying to tell us is like, look, Thanksgiving and Christmas are not going to be great this year. You're going to have to really listen to Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, or I'll Be Home for Christmas. I'll be home for Christmas only in my dreams. So I actually won't be home for Christmas but I was having this conversation over the weekend that if you think about, we hear a lot about the Spanish flu in 1918, which went into 1919. And eventually, people got past it. And what followed that up was the Roaring 20s. So I'm expecting that by mid 2021 or early 2022, we're going to have new Roaring 20s. And if you thought that everything was crazy, and if you thought the world was crazy in 2019, I mean, it's going to be like the biggest, it's going to be like Mardi Gras for like 5 years.
Jetpacks
like every day.
For everyone.
Oh my God, please. Yes. I want a jetpack. It's going to just be like, I think it's going to be crazy because people are going to be like, oh, thank God I can finally do something. And I think at first people are going to be like, oh, I'm so nervous. But then I think eventually we're going to be able to have fun again. And
I think later than you said 21, 22, I'm thinking 23, 24.
Well, you know what? You don't have to have fun in 2022. I'll have enough fun for all of us. Yeah, I think that I think that there will still be modifications to things. I mean, I mean, look, they had people in the stands for the World Series. You know that, Tamara, because it was in Texas. They had like 17,000 people there. So I think that with a vaccine, yeah, I don't think Dodger Stadium is going to have 55,000 people in it in this calendar year. But I bet it would have, I don't know, 20,000 at some point before the end of next year. I think that they will have large scale events, but they'll try and space people out more. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's just wishful thinking. I don't know. But what I do know is that we hope that however people celebrate, they have a happy Thanksgiving. And honestly, I feel like plenty of you out there don't like seeing your family that much. You're kind of relieved to have the excuse. You're just gonna get Boston Market the day before, put it in the fridge, and then in the middle of like the third NFL game, you're like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to eat now, or maybe even it's just a turkey sub from Subway. Just keep it simple. I hope whatever people do, though, I hope that they're happy, and we encourage everybody to be safe. And we will be back soon. There are still some days on the calendar for election 2020. I guess December 14th is the last big one, right, Scott?
Well, yeah, that's the Electoral College.
Yeah.
That's when they meet, and obviously January 6th with the new Congress.
Yeah.
Well, January 5th with the Georgia runoffs, but January 6th is when the Congress goes in and basically says, okay, these are the electors, and they open up the fancy package, and then they say, okay, great, these are the votes, and then it's really, it's done is for all intents and purposes at that point too.
Yes. So we'll be back. There'll be more to talk about in the month of December. But until then, Tamra, where can people find all these great TikToks that you're talking about here?
Find me on TikTok at Hey Tamra.
And Scott, where can people find you?
Find me right here at SMan80.
And you can find me right here at Christian DMZ. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the Blattcast YouTube channel for the actual Blattcast. But then also we have after shows on Star Trek Discovery and Star Wars The Mandalorian. And we talk Marvel movies and comics and all kinds of really important things over on those shows. So thanks, everybody. Hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you soon.